Now we're going to show you how to install the taper attachment and grind a tapered end mill. To sharpen tapered end mills, bolt the taper attachment onto the right side of the motor spindle in the two threaded holes beneath the angle veneer. Remove the complete stylus bracket assembly from the air bearing by sliding it out of the T-slot. Remove the stylus along with the bracket that it is screwed into from the larger main bracket which fits into the air bearing. Bolt it on the taper attachment by inserting the sleeve through the stylus bracket, dropping the bolt through the sleeve, and then loosely hand tighten the bolt. Adjust the center height of the stylus to the center line of the air bearing spindle, using the same method as when it was mounted on the air bearing. Set the primary clearance angle on the motor spindle to a clearance angle that is midway between the small and large diameters of the tapered end mill. Example, if the small diameter is 3/8 and the large diameter is 3/4, use the clearance angle for 9/16. Maneuver the stylus just to the right side in front of the grinding wheel, as close to the wheel as you can get it without hitting the wheel when it turns. Tighten the bolt on the taper attachment. Place the tapered end mill in the appropriate collet and insert it into the air bearing spindle as usual. Set the angle of the air bearing swivel base to the same angle as the taper of your end mill. As in this case, we are setting it to 7 degrees. Push the air spindle all the way to the right and bring the indexing ring all the way to the left. Turn the index ring around so that the indexes won't run into the pin. Tighten the screw in the indexing ring. Using the X-axis machine handle, feed the table to the right until the front end of the end mill is in front of the stylus. Using the Y-axis handle, bring the wheel forward until the front of the end mill rests on the stylus. Turn the motor on and feed the grinding wheel forward until you spark off. Unlike the grinding procedure for a straight end mill, you will be feeding the tool forward instead of pulling it back. What you are going to do is crank the X-axis handle with one hand, keeping the end mill riding on the stylus by using the other hand to keep light clockwise pressure on the air spindle. This will move the end mill forward. In the first flute, rock the air spindle back towards you, and while keeping it rocked back, crank the X-axis handle so that the table moves back to the right. Set the air bearing down gently on the front end of the flute and repeat the same procedure on all flutes. We will now show you the methods for sharpening a radius end mill. It is important that all the steps are carried out carefully and in order, as each setting is critical to achieving the correct geometry. We will first sharpen a full ball end mill. The first step is to properly calibrate the radius attachment using the center finder. Place the 1/4-inch setting pin with a flat in the fixture using a 1/4-inch 5C collet. The pin's flat side should be down and horizontal to the table. Remove the black plug from the pivot hole. Loosen the screw in the setting ring on the center finder and set the center finder into the height of the fixture spindle center line by bringing the top of the center finder to touch the underside of the setting pin. Tighten the screw in the setting ring. Rotate the setting pin so the flat side is now vertical. Turn the cross slide dial until the center finder touches the flat side. If the cross feed dial does not read 0 at this point, loosen the 2 set screws in the dial, rotate it until it reads 0, and tighten the set screws. Adjust the indicating arrows on the face of the cross slide underneath the collet opening so that they line up when the dial is at 0. You need to use a cup wheel and a freshly and insert your end mill into the fixture. With the flutes parallel to the table. It's very critical that the flutes are parallel to the table. Push the index pin into the slot which corresponds with the number of flutes. Set the clearance angle of the motor spindle to the appropriate primary first grind angle. Secondary will not be necessary. Using the machine's Y-axis handle, touch the grinding wheel to the OD of the end mill. Do not touch this handle for the duration of the process. Back the end mill away from the wheel to the right side using the fixture's X feed handle until you can swing the fixture 90 degrees without hitting the wheel. Now swing the radius attachment 90 degrees so the end mill now faces the wheel. The 90-degree stop pin will stop it at the correct position. Using the machine's X-axis handle, maneuver the table until the center of the end mill is in front of the edge of the grinding wheel. And turn the motor on. Slowly advance the tool to the wheel using the fixture's X handle and swiveling the fixture back and forth at the same time. When you start making contact, stop advancing and swing the radius the full 90 degrees. Feed into the wheel until you are grinding on all sides of the radius. Do not take too much off. At this point, note the dial reading on the fixture's X handle and bring the end mill away from the wheel 1 or 2 turns. Index to the next flute and sharpen the other side. Remembering not to feed past the dial reading that you stopped at on the first flute. We'll now sharpen a corner radius on a standard end mill. Set the motor spindle clearance angle to the primary first grind clearance angle, which corresponds with your end mill's diameter. Insert the center finder in the pivot hole of the fixture. Using the machine's X and Y handles, maneuver the fixture so that the corner center finder touches the wheel. Now dial away from the wheel using the machine's Y-axis handle, the same distance as the corner radius that you desire to grind. Example, if you want to put a 65 thousandths corner radius on the end mill, dial 65 thousandths back from the wheel. After removing the center finder, do not move the machine's Y-axis handle again. Insert the end mill in the collet with the flutes parallel to the table and index pin engaged in the proper slot, which corresponds to the number of flutes. Use the radius attachment cross-slide Y-axis handle to touch the OD of the end mill to the grinding wheel. Do not touch the radius attachment Y-axis handle again. Back the fixture away from the wheel using the radius attachment's X handle until you can swivel the fixture 90 degrees without hitting the wheel. Now turn the motor on. Swivel the fixture 90 degrees until it hits the stop pin. Using the machine's X-axis handle, maneuver the fixture so that the right corner of the wheel is in front of the flute on your right-hand side. Your initial contact point on the wheel will be the size of the radius, away from the OD of the end mill on the face. In other words, if your radius is 100 thousandths, your initial contact will be on the face of your right flute 100 thousandths from the OD. Feed towards the wheel using the radius attachment's X handle. When you are close to the wheel, begin swinging the fixture until you begin to make contact. Once contact is made, swivel the fixture completely around until the radius blends into the OD. Once it blends in, stop grinding that flute. Note your reading on the radius attachment's X handle and back away from the wheel 1 or 2 revolutions. Index the next flute and repeat the procedure.
Unlock into.
To set the cam attachment, first remove the air bearing stylus bracket assembly. Slide the axial follower in the T slot and line it up so that the center of the follower is under the center of the air spindle. Install the appropriate cam by removing the retaining ring and sliding the cam over the quill. The side of the cam that has the relief will be on the follower. Remove the air bearings indexing ring and drawbar. Slide the spring housing over the quill and compress the spring housing approximately 3/8 to 1/2 inch so that the cam is pulled into the follower. Replace the drawbar into the spindle and install the handle over the knurled end of the drawbar by tightening the 2 set screws. You'll need to use a 5-inch cup wheel that has a 3/4 wide face. Set the motor spindle angle at 0. To dress the wheel, a diamond dresser is required. Of course, if you're using a CBN wheel, this isn't necessary. Set the air-bearing swivel base angle to 1/2 of the countersink's included angle. For example, if you have an 82-degree countersink, set the swivel base angle to 41 degrees. Place the countersink into the spindle using the appropriate size collet. Align the cutting edge with the center line of the cam set screw. This is important for the timing of the drop. Now turn the motor on. While rotating the air bearing, feed the countersink into the wheel. Keep grinding until you've achieved a uniform finish around the cutting edge. If you are using a multi-flute countersink cam, align the cutting edge as before and sharpen the first 3 flutes. After sharpening the first 3 flutes, rotate the cam to align with the cutting edge of the second 3 flutes that have not been sharpened and repeat the process. This procedure is the same for the 4 and 8 flute cam. Install the appropriate cam, spring housing, axial follower, and handle on the air bearing the same as you would to set up for a countersink. The motor spindle clearance angle remains at 0. Set the air bearing swivel base to the same angle as the lead of the tap that you will be grinding. Install the radial follower by placing it on the table in front of the air bearing and loosely bolting it to the table with the T-bolt and nut supply. The roller portion of the radial follower must be at the height of the center line of the air spindle. Adjust the height of the arm by rotating the post that the follower is set on, and then tighten the nut. After setting the follower's roller height, rotate the cam until the lowest point of the cam's relief is in front of the roller. Pull the radial follower into the cam and then tighten the T-bolt which fastens the follower to the table. As tap shank ODs are not readily compatible with standard 5C collet sizes, we suggest that you mount the tap in an accurate drill chuck that has a straight shank arbor and mount the drill chuck's shank in the appropriate collet. The grinding procedure is then the same for taps as it is for countersink, rotating the spindle until the lead has been completely ground. The next tool we'll sharpen is a drill on our new drill sharpening attachment. After removing the air bearing from the machine and slide the drill attachment onto the table, the left corner of the attachment bottom plate should be flush with the left side of the table. You'll need to use the 60 grit pink aluminum oxide wheel with the 3/4 inch wide face. The CBN wheel will provide the best finish. If you're using the aluminum oxide wheel, dress it by inserting a diamond in the chuck of the fixture and then by traversing the diamond across the face of the wheel. Position the motor spindle assembly so that the base plate of the motor hangs over the Y-axis table as far as it will without exposing the guide pin. Using the machine's Y-axis handle, bring the wheel towards you to see if the motor spindle table easily moves past the point where the motor base will be hanging over the X-axis table. If the motor base hits the X-axis table, place a thin shim underneath the motor base on top of the Y-axis table so that the base can clear the X-axis table. This step is necessary for point splitting, which will be done later. Swing the wheel location arm up and touch the wheel of the locator pin by turning the machine's Y-axis table. Swing the arm down